All right, guys. Well, welcome to the first episode of Biomassed. It is a Dust 514 slash Eve Legion biomass. Our primary focus is going to be on that game, but we'll hit up a bit of Eve as well, and possibly Valkyrie as time goes on. I'm Pokey Dravon, CPM 1 candidate, and I'll let the guys here tell you who they are. Start with Xel.
I'm Soraya Xel. I am an alliance leader in the Top Men Alliance on Dust 514, and I am also running for CPM1.
Let's go from the bottom. So, Jaysyn.
Hi, I'm Jaysyn Larrisen. I'm a member of OSG Planetary Operations on the Dust side, and I'm a longtime EVE player. Took a long hiatus, but I subbed back into the game here recently.
And Pukin.
I'm FrFrmPukin, one of the co-owners of Multiplex Gaming. I'm the CEO of MPX and EVE, and part of LA3 leadership.
Okay, and Bajran.
Hey, I'm Bajran Bali in game, also known as KDS119 on YouTube, and I'm happy to be here for y'all's first podcast.
We appreciate it. And Mr. at the bottom there, Urziel? Or he's gone. Okay.
I'm Urziel99, director in Multiplex Gaming, producer on Pod Side, and occasional guest on other people's shows.
Yeah, I was just do a shout out right now to the guys over at Pod Side and Multiplex Gaming. They helped us get this set up. They're letting us use their stream right now, and it kind of saved our asses because we decided to do this, and there really wasn't enough time to get everything set up. So they definitely saved us for this week. So thanks guys, I appreciate it. So
yeah, our pleasure, man. Our pleasure.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. So yeah, we talked a bit about it yesterday on Pod Side, but Fanfest was certainly interesting, especially for the Dusties out there. We got some pretty crazy news. Just as a quick recap, CCP came out with their Dust 514 keynotes and decided to announce a game called Legion for the PC, which is effectively a Dust 514 reboot for the PC, taking the game in a better direction, but at the same time also tapering off support for Dust on the PS3 without any concrete support for the PS4. So it's been controversial to say the least. We've had a lot of feedback on the forums, mostly negative, but yeah, to kind of talk about that and where Dust is going and what Legion's going to be. So let's get your thoughts, Al.
Well, my biggest concern is that they have indeed committed to maintaining Dust 514 at least in the near future, and that they're going to continue to release updates for it. But I guess my biggest concern was that we didn't actually see any evidence that was the case at FanFest. They didn't have anything to show for PS3 users at all. Whereas, of course, EVE players get both the here's what's coming next month, as well as the here's what we're working on long term.
Yeah, I think I think everyone can agree that the nature in which it was announced was pretty piss poor. It kind of screwed over the people that went to FanFest and were listening to FanFest for Dust and got basically no information on it. I mean, personally speaking, I think the move to PC is good because the game was being hindered by the hardware. The issue is that how do you deal with your current player base, especially when you're shifting the platform so significantly? It's not an obvious upgrade like from PS3 to PS4. It's PS3 to PC is a pretty significant jump, and I think a lot of the community feels betrayed by that. And the fact that CCP really didn't address that at the time, and they still haven't really addressed it in a concrete manner, is what's making people so anxious, causing all the issues right now.
Well, I think there's an issue with that to some degree, is that they need to get, as we've heard some things from CPM members, we've heard some things from CCP devs, and in some cases they're outright conflicting, and in many other cases it's just unclear. I know that the CPM is actually currently going through their CPM summit, and some of that I guess we should get some minutes to, but hopefully they'll get things straightened out now that CCP has figured out that the CPM weren't kidding when they said that it was a bad idea to announce it in the way that they did.
Yeah.
One thing on that, I've as many people have, we've been engaging the CPM and a couple of the devs here and there on the side. And one thing, I literally right before I got on the podcast, I got a note from a couple of them that basically said that what they've realized is that in the rush to try to answer a lot of the questions, they are putting out some mixed messages. So what I think you're going to see here in the very near future is they're going to basically pull back a little bit, sync their messaging, and they're going to come back and literally attempt to try to categorically go down a lot of the community's biggest concerns. And that's just something I'd like to transmit. I mean, one thing that was made very clear to me by a couple of the CPM members about an hour ago was that CCP internally clearly realizes how bad they stepped in it from a PR or a communication standpoint. And that's actually a large part of the discussions that are going on right now with the CPM summit. So, again, I would like to echo probably Pokey and Zell's statement that the move to PC ultimately that is a good thing for the long-term health of the game, and really to create sort of that shared universe that CCP does want in the future for the two games and Valkyrie. But the way they did it was handled, I think universally everybody understands, very badly. And I think what they're trying to do now is try to figure out how they can come back and literally earn back a little bit of the trust, which will be extremely hard. But I think they do realize their error right now.
Well, I mean, I think there's a significant body of the player base that you're not going to get back unless you can commit to consoles, and that's
no doubt.
we've gotten a couple answers on that. Is people obviously it's been very clearly indicated that a move to Unreal 4 and to the x86 architecture makes it a lot closer to actually what the PS4 runs on, for example. But it was actually just in the last couple hours that CCP Logibro reiterated that they won't be looking at that until the PC version is already out.
Yeah, no, and just a quick thing, I got some clarification on that, and my understanding, at least from what was communicated to me, is that their intent is to build the game correctly essentially on the second time, if you will, but build the game correctly, and they want to use the tools that they are most comfortable with and gives them the most options, which is the PC. And if it's done correctly, a port to the PS4 is certainly not off the table. But they're adamant that they want to build it as best they can in the PC, architecture first. And you know what? I to be frank with you, I can't fault them for that. I will say this. Dust actually brought me back to New Eden. It brought me back to playing Eve. And I bought into the vision just like a lot of other people other people have. The vision isn't gone. They're just trying to take a different path that they think has a higher probability of success than what they're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down. I think if the way they had handled it, if they had said, okay, so here's what we're doing with Dust right now. We're working on this side game called Legion. It's going to be the PC version. We're going to be developing it on PC. We will be porting it to PS4 at the appropriate time, at which point your Dust characters will transfer over to the PC and PS4 version. If they could make those commitments, and if they had done that initially, I think the outcry would be a fraction of what it is now. But unfortunately, that information wasn't given out. It's still not being given out. It's still, as Zell said, it's broken. It's inconsistent. And I think, like you said, they need to kind of take a moment to step back, re-examine exactly what they're doing, what they're willing to say, what they're going to say, and then come out in a single, clear format. Say, here's the points that you're worried about. Here's what we're going to do. This is what you should be worried about. And if they're gonna move away from the PC and that's their ultimate plan, they need to just come out and say it rather than dancing around the issue. Because I think that middle ground is making people so uncomfortable, and it's kind of like if you're gonna rip the Band-Aid off, just do it all at once. Now I want to see this remain on PC on console. I don't want the current player base to get screwed over. I mean, the Dust player base is, albeit toxic at times, but the fact that people are so emotional and so upset is a testament to show how much they care about this game, and to simply leave them in the dark and leave them behind is just terrible. You've got a good group of guys here. It's a small group, but it's a good group of guys, and they are going to support the game complain while they do it. They're going to support the game if you maintain that level of trust and stay on the console as well as PC. Now, it's going to be CCP's choice if they want to move away from that or not. I hope they don't, but like I said, they need to commit to one or the other rather than dancing around, because I think people are just going to keep freaking out and they're going to keep bleeding off, and they're going to become those people that won't come back. If you piss people off bad enough, even on PS4, they're not going to come back. They're going to give CCP the finger, and that's going to be it. And so it's damage control time, and they need to decide what they're going to do to salvage what they can at the player base at this point.
Yeah, you know what's funny is the whole thing when you're talking about that is I had one of those kind of a flashback to you ever done where they do those trust falls things where you stand on a platform, fall backwards, and you have like 8 people are supposed to work on a team and they're supposed to catch you. Well, it's like you guys are sitting on the edge of the plank, and then instead of just letting you fall, they're like they slam you, like they came over there, they body checked you, and you're flying back, and you don't know if they're back there to catch you. You know what I mean? There's like you don't know if you're gonna land flat on your back and that's done. You don't know, and they're not giving any hint that they are standing out there, putting their arms out ready to catch you guys. That's what that pisses me off about the way they did it, the way they treated you guys at this fan fest. I think it's BS.
Well, I mean, the reason they're not making the commitment now is probably because they have not made the commitment. They've not kept through a lot of their commitments already, and I know that part of it is
typical CCP fashion. So
well, yeah,
I mean, a lot of us Eve players, that's another thing too. Is a lot of us Eve players are used to it. So I think the guys that are Eve players in the Dust 514 community are going, okay, well, this really sucks. Typical CCP, and they're maybe not as butthurt about it, or maybe they're not as okay, this is, typical CCP. However, the guys that are not used to dealing with CCP, the hardcore council guys, are going, WTF, man,
There is something here. It's kind of interesting. And I'd like to preface this by saying that I do not own a PC. I am a console gamer, and I have a lot of the ghost of Steve Jobs walking around my house in the form of Mac products. So let me just preface what I'm about to say with that. In my personal opinion, after looking at this fairly, after about 24 hours of literally kind of the "Are you fucking kidding me" moment, is that I think CCP was desperately trying to do the right thing based on how they had failed the Dust community for the last 2 years and what they promised not delivered and a lot of the drama. So they undersold and they tried to keep things so quiet so they didn't go down the road of this, the soon TM and like you said this, but this doesn't happen. They were literally trying to do that, and they literally tripped over themselves trying to do the right things, like they almost didn't know how, and they were trying and failed. So from that aspect, I think their intentions are in the right place. How they go about it is I think we all agree, kind of a grease fire. But they've overpromised before and gotten burned. So I think they literally swung the pendulum the other way, and that's actually causing some of the problems. That caused the problems getting when they had the initial communication. And I think right now what you're seeing is that they're trying to hedge things and not overpromise. My personal opinion is I think give it about a week, let them get their shit together, and then when they come back and talk to the community, it's going to be a much more synchronized message. And I think it still may not be things we want to hear, but I think they're trying to be as starkly transparent as they can, but it doesn't come over very well. So and again, I'm certainly not a PC guy, and I'm just kind of offering that as maybe a separate opinion on this.
Yeah, I mean, going off of, I guess, a gut feeling of mine is that I think the way the situation appears right now is probably quite a bit worse than it actually is in reality. And I think that the summit they're having right now is going to be, paramount in figuring out where they're standing, like you said, give it some time, and then hopefully we'll get some solid, concrete, unified information rather than, blurbs here and there from different people. So, yeah, I'd give it a week, and my gut feeling is that it's not going to be as bad as people are freaking out. It's not going to make people, happy. They're not gonna be like, oh, okay, it's all fine now. I mean, they're still going to be upset, but I think the initial knee-jerk reaction, admittedly, was probably was reasonable with the way things are presented, but I think for the way things actually are going to be, or the way that they are now, is going to be a bit more an easier pill to swallow for many of the players.
Well, I mean, they haven't, as someone in the channel mentioned, they still haven't actually committed to the fact that Legion is going to be a game that exists, because they don't even have that much concrete. And so, it seemed to me that, diverting the majority of dev resources away from, a working game for something before you're even confirmed to be able to actually release it. There is no green light for Eve Legion actually becoming a game. It is referred to as a prototype.
Yeah, and that's another thing they need to commit to is, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it. We're not going to dance around it and be in this middle ground where nothing is really happening. If they're going to do Legion, come out and say, yes, we're going to do this.
Well, I hate to say it, but I mean, somebody had to see this coming because Dust isn't going to survive on the PS3 for much longer. I mean, tops, it has another 3 years on the PS3. Something is going to happen.
But everyone expected PS4 to be that something.
Yeah, it was the more logical progression rather than jumping to PC. I think actually most people expected to go to PS4 and PC because, as Xel mentioned, the architecture of the two is similar enough where porting is not really that crazy, whereas PS3 to PC obviously is. So when you kind of
But even then, you're going to alienate people. I mean, there's going to be a cutover date looming above all of this, and until that date, you're not going to see the progression, the updates, things that you really want to see until that cutover date, and you're going to alienate lots and lots of people who don't have PS4s if you were to go that way.
Actually, no, I'm not so sure about that, Bajran. Mostly because, and on the surface, by the way, I actually your logic is 100% sound, and I'm only presenting this as somebody who's been kicking around, dust, no pun intended, for maybe about 18 months, essentially around the beta time. I think the whole community, the minute the game came out on PS3, there was no question that this thing was going to move on, at least in people's minds, there was no question it was moving on to PS4. And I think that some of the concerns that you're articulating, the community was pretty inoculated to. Like literally, if they'd walked out there and said, "Okay, this thing called Eve Legion, this is coming out on this is our goal for PS4, what we're going to show you." If they'd said that only, and then the rest of the spiel is no change, you'd have a enormously different reaction right now. I also tend to agree with Pokey that I think a lot of us actually anticipated there would be some PC linkage. Now, in all fairness, there's a game called Warframe that tries to do this too. There's a couple in Planet Side too, and what you see is because of the way Sony works with patches, they're a patch or two behind what the PC version is, mostly because of the controls that Sony puts on. So you have some very valid concerns, but I think this is just my observation of the Dust Side community. I think they would have been much more inoculated to those concerns. And I think the minute people got on, because it's a socially driven game, much like Eve, people would have very quickly been made aware that the goal was to move this over to a PS4 in relatively short order. And I think you would have probably seen people extremely positive about that, even if they had to go, "Hey, we're turning things off. There's going to be a gap for like 30 days. Like we're going to literally cut dust off PS3, and then 30 days later, it's going to pop up on PS4." I think people would have accepted that.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen this sort of thing with games like Final Fantasy XIV, where the original game was released and it was, not very good, and the Square Enix said, okay, this game is shit. We're gonna work on a reboot of the game, and we're gonna redo it. We're gonna make it better and re-release it. And I'm a big fan of that because I think that's kind of where Dust was right now. Is that Dust in the PS3 was on a faulty foundation. It was kind of growing like a skyscraper, but it couldn't get any higher because of that foundation. And they realized that they were, grasping at strings at that point to try to make it better. And they realized that they need to go to a different platform to do so. So I think in terms of the health of the game, they made the absolute right choice because going to PC, they've got control of updates. They've got a stronger platform to build off of. They've got that ability to actually go where they want with the game and not be limited by the hardware. So, strictly speaking, from the health of the game, this is the right move to make. Now, they've obviously made that. The question is, where do you put your players at that point? What are you going to do with them with the console and whatnot? And I think it's easy to tell console players, well, just go buy a PC. That's not going to happen. Many players are not going to go out and buy a PC. They're going to stick to the console. They're going to buy a PS4. That's what they expected all along. So, like I said, from a completely business standpoint, they made the right call. From a community standpoint, they've got to come out with some more information.
Now, on that note, one thing I'd offer is maybe we could kind of shape the topic a little bit more. Is if you took the whole drama about Eve Legion versus Dust and all that aside, let's kind of remove that part of it. All right, what you saw and what you heard in the streams or at FanFest in terms of what they were trying to deliver. This is my opinion. Now I'm trying to sort of focus on what I think is a fairly positive message that frankly has been kind of coated with crap, based on the delivery. They effectively were showing us almost everything that the community has been asking for about 2 years. And they were showing some fairly concrete steps towards those things.
I don't think so.
Okay. So
I
what do you
mean,
think they were showing us?
Well, I mean, in the keynote, the only thing they showed us was the bridge map with better graphics and trees. I mean, sure, I've seen threads just as well as everybody else asking for trees, but I don't think anybody expected the year's progress to be the addition of trees and high resolution textures. The progression system that they talked about was, in that session was, definitely a step forward in terms of how many people think they should go about it. But it was also just there was no more depth to it than a forum post. There was no decision making on it. It was all, this is just what we're thinking. Maybe at this time, it's an idea that we had. And in actuality, they really didn't show anything at FanFest at all that didn't already exist in Dust on the PS3, other than things that they talked about that they would like to do that haven't implemented. So where we sit right
I don't know
now,
that that's accurate. I mean, let me put it this way. They clearly showed that we were expanding out of Molten Heath into the rest of the universe. That's kind of a big thing. They clearly alluded to, or really flat out said, that there would be a mechanism for PvE, and that was in terms of the salvage missions, which is it's been another pretty big thing. They also indicated that there would be some deeper linkages in terms of the economy, like a true shared economy. And that's where they got into the discussion about perhaps we make all the drop shoots BPOs and you pay for modules and weapons and some other discussion like that. But there was no discussion at all about having two separate economies. It was literally like building Legion into the EVE economy instead of trying to make it backwards compatible, so to speak, or try to do a bridge to it. So those are pretty significant. They also clearly referenced mechanics for court battles or player generated tourneys instead of what we've been doing with like Planet Fight Club and some of the the drama with that. So I can't really say that they haven't been trying to deliver. And frankly, I mean, you're right. There was the bridge map, and it was some better graphics and stuff. But I'm not sure I would have expected a lot different. Frankly, if it went over to a PS4 or PS3. He also clearly indicated that they're looking at literally different planet architectures in terms of the environment, which is fine. It's graphically pleasing and stuff, but I don't know that's a bad thing. He also indicated a way to third party other people, or at least change the dynamics of having a 16 on 16 sort of boxing match is what I equate a dust match to. But opening it up further once you get people in match or in the instance, if you will. So all those things I think are very positive, and they spoke fairly forthrightly about them. I mean,
I'm just
does that
saying
sound
that
right?
we didn't see any actual progress in that. They just said this is. I mean, that just as well could have been that they took the 10 most liked threads on the features and ideas discussion board and made slides out of them. The only things we saw actual progress on was a replacement for the Merc quarters, a new start screen, menu screen, and we saw a higher graphics quality map. We didn't see any real demonstration of actual progress. I mean, a lot of those things were things that they said they wanted to do in Dust, and now say they can't.
Right, but my point is, what would you have wanted them to show you?
Should any credit be given to CCP that over the course of time, I mean, they've basically taken and made a whole nother game. Should any credit be due to them for that?
We don't even know how much of a game we had. We saw a menu screen, a rail rifle, and a map. We saw no act on objectives. We saw no NPC AI in the game. We saw no example of any new interface in what was actually practically shown. They ported the game to Unreal 4, and that's all that they really had to show.
But I mean, a lot of the things they were talking about are basically menu driven. I mean, a lot of the issues that the game has right now that people talk about is, an imbalance between gear and skills and whatnot, and they address those issues. But I mean, what they could have shown you for that would have been just a skill tree. And it may be too early to show any sort of concrete skill tree, but it's just a menu. I mean, I think showing the graphics off of the game, showing the smoothness of the gameplay was more of a presentation rather than here looking at a bunch of spreadsheets. And I think that just because they didn't show a skill tree doesn't mean that they don't have one that they're building or they aren't working on it. I think what they showed is probably the best that they could have to an extent. I mean, granted, there's no PvE, anything like that, but a lot of the stuff they talked about really wouldn't have been that great of a presentation.
I don't know. I would like to see at least something more than a map that I've played on for the last year.
Well, I mean, to their credit, they started this right at 6 months ago with not even the same size dev team that they're working on, or they were working on Dust with. So I think Bajran's right. I have to give them credit. And here's the thing: even if we all agree that the PS3 was not the long-term answer, at some point, what they should have done 6 months ago is said, you know what, boys, we're starting to work on the next iteration, and it's going to pull away support from Dust. So your patches are going to take longer to get out, and they might not be the same level of content that you would have wanted. We would have all shut up and colored. And that's really what I think has burned a lot of people, is that had they said something earlier, you would have had a lot less bitching about, like, are the patches, what I wanted? Is it this? Is it that? People would probably have accepted a slightly slower developmental cycle.
Oh, it'd be accepted.
But there was clearly the thought that you had the entire team working on one game. Well, the reality is you had half the team maybe working on one game. So from that aspect, there's no other way that they could build it on the PS4 or build it on the PC. It doesn't matter. I mean, they could build it on a fucking iPad. The point is, they were going to have to decrement the support to Dust in order to initiate support for Eve Legion in whatever form that took. So I cannot fault them for that. What I fault them for is horrendous communications for the most part.
Laser focused on PS3.
Exactly.
And we were making fun of them before that turned out to only be true for 2 weeks after they said it.
I hate to completely disagree with you guys, but I mean, no matter when this came out, there was going to be revolt. I mean, let's think about this. Earlier in the game, you had these booster packs or whatever. Some of them were $30, $50, and upwards to $100 and beyond. And then CCP, no matter when they came out and said it, oh well, we're dropping support for the game. You've already had big disappointments with the community of taking away BPOs and all this other stuff, and then for the people that have spent Aurum month after month and bought the booster packs, and now you're going to come out and say you're dropping the game for another project. It doesn't really matter when the news was delivered. It's going to cause some tempers to flare.
Right, Bajran, it would have. But I think if they had incremented this over time, where it's like, hey, you guys all know we want to move to another platform, but we are going to maintain Dust for at least X amount of time. I really, you're right. There would have been some butthurt people, no doubt, but it honestly would not have been the level that you're seeing now. And the reality is, the community is small, but it is a pretty hardcore group, and they all want that next generation game. But the way it's being delivered and pushed is tough.
It should have come at they should have announced it when they announced that they were giving everyone all the new drop suits and weapons and cloaking in 1.8. I think the biggest thing is they didn't, they're supposedly claiming that PS3 support will continue and that they're going to continue to release at the very least fixes and maybe some content for the PS3, but they had nothing of that to even put forward at FanFest. And I think that's why people have viewed it as the game is being canceled, the game is being completely set aside. Our money is solely going to pay for a PC game that we're not going to play. Whereas if they'd said, if they'd come out and said, okay, we're releasing this, and this for the PS3, and by the way, we are also pushing, this percentage of our force to start working on porting the game to the Unreal 4 engine. It would have been absolutely a thrilling announcement, but that's not what they did. They just
agree.
said,
I agree.
dropped on the side, and here's this cool new thing that we know the EVE players who are here will get excited about.
I mean, the reality is if they took the first 5 minutes of CCP Rouge's presentation and changed it, they would have probably cut 70% of the fucking hate mail and the drama.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Excuse me. Is that granted, I wasn't at FanFest. I didn't go to the roundtable, so I could be wrong on some of these points. But the feel that I got from the Legion presentation was that they're developing a first-person shooter game that is structured a lot more like Eve, and then it's got more exploration, more of an open world sandbox sort of feel in it, but it has dust combat as its PvP aspect and part of its PvE. So my question is, if Legion has dust combat plus all this other extra Eve stuff, what's stopping them from developing that core combat experience on the PS3 with dust and mirroring that over to Legion, where you've got the weapons are the same, how they perform is the same, the balancing is the same, it's just copied over to Legion. So in that regard, if that is indeed true, can they develop the games at the same time and use what they are working on in Dust in Legion at the same time? That way, Dust isn't necessarily losing support because Dust is effectively just a small facet of what Legion is overall. It's kind of tinfoiling, but I think if they had approached it that way and said it that way, that people wouldn't have an issue because they would be maintaining that support while simultaneously working on Legion at the same time.
Well, I mean, the first thing to just set aside is this whole notion that Eve Legion is a new game. Sure, it's a 2.0. It's starting from scratch on the code itself, I guess. But you're still talking about it. It is all of the same promises that they made this year at FanFest, or the same promises that they made, a couple of years ago for Dust. It is Dust. It's just, it's a marketing decision. It's, oh well, our Metacritic score doesn't go up or down later. It doesn't get a reset button. But if we give it a new name, it does. Companies will review it like it's a new product. I really think that's just a marketing speak thing, and I think that's added a lot to the confusion because it's saying your game is canceled, and here's this new game that is for Eve players.
Well, it's also my understanding that they have a 5-year contract with Sony that Dust will remain a Sony exclusive, so they were legally unable to put Dust on the PC because it would break that contract. By making a game and by saying it's not the same game, even though we all know it is, they can kind of dodge that bullet, and I think that's, like you said, causing a lot of the confusion, but that's the reason why they're doing it, and I think they can't necessarily comment on it as to piss Sony lawyers off.
I don't buy the legal thing. I've heard too many people say that there isn't such a deal, including CCP saying that there is no exclusivity deal, and they've said that on the record.
I'm not sure, so I can't confirm or deny that. So, but that's just my understanding.
Can't confirm or deny. You got the marketing speak down already.
Oh, that's a low blow. See, so I actually have a question for both you guys. Knowing what we know now, and with some baseline assumptions here that Dust 514 will end up staying on the PS3 for a while, let's say 2 years, while they're simultaneously developing Legion for a next gen platform. Okay, what is a realistic and practical level of support, either in terms of bug fixes or content that you can expect or that you would like to see on the PS3 side? And I'm kind of asking both of you because you're both CPM1 candidates. And I just kind of want your take for that. What do you think is a practical and realistic expectation, knowing that the dev community for Dust is split in half? One's trying to develop the next gen, and the other ones are trying to sustain to some degree what we have in Dust now.
In honesty, I think that in terms of the actual models and code, they have all the tools there for the most part. I don't necessarily think the game needs more weapons than it has now, to be honest. We've got, what, 20 different weapons, give or take? It's all numbers. The balancing has to keep going. The issue fixing the cloaking has to happen. Fixing PC mechanics has to happen. And that's a numbers thing. That's an economic shift sort of situation. How many clones for how much money, how much gets paid out in this and that situation. That's it. The game isn't entirely without its fun. I mean, sometimes you have a bad day and sometimes you have a really good day. And I don't think that it's, impossible to make this game feel well to play long term, but they have to prove that they're going to do it, because the reality is you say Dust sticks it out 2 years. The reality is Dust 514's time remaining on PS3 is not a decision that will be made just arbitrarily by CCP. That's going to come down to how many people are still playing it. And if CCP doesn't, get right out front and as soon as possible say, here's what we're working on for Dust on the PS3 in the near future, you're going to see player counts steadily dropping until a point where matchmaking is not going to be able to do anything anyways, and there's going to be no point in keeping the server turned on. So, it comes down to enough to keep people, feeling that the game is actually improving and that the game is remaining fun to play.
Yeah, but at the same note, I think at this point in the game, they need to be releasing content to show the player base that they're willing to commit to continuing on some degree some development of Dust, and that's why I bring up the whole mirroring the combat system over to at least to some degree over to Legion. That way they can work on both and still be making progress, because it is numbers. Graphics aside, weapon models, they don't really matter. It's all about numbers and how weapons perform and how suits perform and whatnot. And I think they can do both, and they need to show the community that they will do both. Now, I think it was Rouge that said that they will continue to improve the Dust experience, but not necessarily release new content. Which I think the improving the experience is what you're talking about. Balancing issues, tweaking numbers. I think that's good. To some extent, I think they need to continue on some level, even if it's not big. Releasing 4 new drop suits this month. Just adding something to the game within reason that shows the community we will continue to support for some time, but as long as they are aware, eventually this will end and we're going to be moving over to Legion in whatever form. And I think some minimal support in terms of content is important. I mean, people have been crying for heavy weapons, for a Galente and a Mar heavy weapon. I think that should still happen.
I think could be pretty reasonable, yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's some small holes that need to be filled, and I think doing that is going to do wonders for showing the community that CCP isn't totally giving them the finger, and then they can kind of work in how they're going to actually transfer that over to Legion, how that's all going to work, a little bit further down the line.
And I would like to see some push towards a new game mode that doesn't require a lot of assets to create. That's just, again, it's a mechanical thing in Notion. I think it might be kind of hard to say that we would get new maps, because the maps that we already had in the pipeline got pushed and held back because they weren't able to optimize them well enough to perform well on the PS3. And with the fact that they're working on a new game that has much greater limitations, I doubt they're going to be particularly motivated to keep trying to optimize those maps down to Dust. So I don't know if we would see more maps. I think weapons would probably be fairly simple and straightforward in many cases to get through. I would love to see another game mode. I think that if the right game mode was chosen and just one additional game mode even was put in, it would give a lot of people a new experience and more variety to come in and play on, because you want to mix it up. You don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I think if they either added court battles or some version of, dare I say, even capture the flag, but I would really like to see court battles, because then you open up to a tournament structure that you can legitimately run outside PC.
The players can do it within their own corps, right? Players could do it within their own corps, or corp versus corp, and it would just be fun stuff. And like the UT thing going on, I think it would be a lot of fun.
It's exactly what it would end up being.
And that's really just UI because, as it is, CCP Bro can spin up custom matches. He's done it before, and really all they need to do is create, an option to expose that capability out to players to, spin up a match for whatever reason they want.
Yeah, and I think retaining players and helping to kind of quell this fire that's going on right now is that has in itself inherent value. Now it's probably not that economically viable, but again, if they want to keep players around and hopefully move them to Legion either on the PC or the PS4 eventually, they need to throw us a bone here, And like you said, there's lots of stuff they can do that requires little to no, asset investment. I mean, I've done some concept theory crafting on converting existing maps over to a skirmish 1.0 sort of gameplay where you can, have a true attack defense asymmetrical battle, and it wouldn't really take that much in terms of asset creation. They could use existing maps. It's all the same stuff, and I think trying to push some of that out is going to do wonders. I mean, like or court battles, like you said, people are crying for court battles. I know tons of people would love court battles, and like you said, all that is UI. There's nothing involved other than the UI, and if they could do that, it's going to make people happy. It's that sort of thing that they could have announced at FanFest that would have been a nice segue into here's what we're giving you now to kind of hold you over until Legion, and I think that needs to happen.
If they would have, if they would have said we're working on court battles that should be ready, in the next couple months, and we're also working on the next generation version of Dust. Here's a sample, and I guess the tough point is still where they say it's PC only at this time, but they could have at least said, but we're looking into consoles as a bare minimum. That I think the part that really kind of roughed it up to was the next day when Hilmar was talking about a focus on PC as a company focus. But it's really just up in the air on that, I think.
That's a pretty good cut on that, guys. And I just kind of wanted to transition kind of off of that since we kind of walked you into a sort of like a what now discussion. But sort of what I'm looking at is you guys are both CPM1 candidates. And you're both, Truth and Lending. You're both friends of mine. So I do occasionally have to ask you some hard questions just to keep this fairly legit. So there's been a lot of discussion in the last 48 hours about the role of the CPM. I think all three of us, and really Bajran and Pukin more so, we're all very familiar with what the CSM can do, or and in some cases what it can't do on the Eve side. What are your thoughts on how the CPM functioned or the position they were put in, leading up to this and at FanFest, sort of having to help pick up the pieces? And the extension of that is, why do you still want to be a CPM? And Soraya, I'll let you go first.
It's the CPM. They did, I think, probably pretty close to the best with what they could do. It's a terrible and cruddy situation there. I know a lot of people who knew CPM members pretty closely, felt very betrayed in a lot of regards, and that was one of the more direct things that I saw. But the reality is a lot of these things occur in game, and these relationships are also to some degree still in game. And when you talk about a non-disclosure agreement, it's serious business. That is a legally binding contract, and you can get yourself in a lot of completely out of game real life crud for breaking it. So I certainly don't think that they did anything wrong by choosing not to break it. And it's not like the CPM could convince CCP to decide what platform to release the game on either. That's we obviously I think we've gotten some impression from them so far just how much CCP didn't listen to them. But I think CCP is listening to them tonight.
I think you are correct. So now, Xel, again, knowing all of this and understanding the uncertainties involved in going forward, what makes you still want to serve as a CPM?
Well, I've got a community of players here that I've played with for a year. I've put a lot of effort into helping these guys and working with them and participating in the community, and I want to continue. that, as much as we've seen what happens with CCP and their ability to listen to, the CPM, I think it's a process, and it's something I've said before is that, you know, Shanghai is learning from once again that they need to actually listen to the CPM, just as the Eve, Reykjavik had to learn that to take the CSM seriously. And I think with every one of these snafus, and this is by far not the first, where CCP was told well in advance by the CPM, bad idea, man, bad idea. But with every step, I think that we're getting closer to a point where the CPM is able to be an effective component to that. And it's going to take time, and it's not going to be done in time for the CPM one to be elected. It's not going to be done by the end of the CPM one's term. It's going to be a continual process of getting CCP to listen to the people who know what they're talking about.
Well, let's go the other way around. Let's reverse that question as well, or add to it is, what is it going to take now from the CPM, the current and the new coming up, to get players on board with CCP's ideas, especially with Legion, to maybe bridge that gap that they whacked with a fucking axe at FanFest, right? And their inability to communicate with the players. What can the CPM 0 and CPM 1 do to bridge that gap?
Well, as I told some of the CPM earlier today, that when they're at that summit, I think the biggest thing they need to reiterate is that CCP needs to put their money where their mouth is on continued Dusk support on PS3 and decide what they can do in the near future and announce it.
Sure, but what about the CPM and the players, right? One thing that I think most of the CSMs have learned in the past is that it's not just them going and talking to CCP, but their ability to communicate with the players as well. To what can they do? Because you have to go both ways. You're right in the as a CPM member. Representing the community, you got to be able to do both, right? You got to be able to not only talk to CCP, but you got to be able to talk to the players. What do you think that they need to do right now to bridge that gap with the players?
I think it's tough because right now, like, I've seen so many discussions where the CPM have tried to get into it, and they get chewed out really, really fast. But it's all going to come down to emphasizing that they are indeed doing their job, and I'm hoping too that we're going to see. We should see some sort of minutes out of the CPM summit, and the big thing is just going to be the CPM kind of needs to restore a bit of community faith, not just in CCP, but the CPM itself, which
because and I think the CPM 0, I think CPM 0, right, and I think and that's what I was going to comment on is I think CPM 0 has had to learn what the other CSMs had to learn is you can't always say I was NDA'd. You got to come back and say, okay, well, we were NDA'd during this, so we really couldn't tell you this. However, look, guys, let's swell this out. We can either do this or we can do that, and work with the community. Say, okay, look, this was hacked. We warned them. They didn't listen. So this is what let's do this, and this. And if you remember, one of our CSM candidates, along with some other people's help, took a list of 99 things to CCP. And said, look, and what if CSM did or CPM did that? Say, look, let's drop a list. Let's talk about and get a list of everybody's issues. Let's try to see what we can do. That's the kind of ideas that I'm looking at. What other things can the CPM do, current and the new, to help CCP restitch this back together? If they are here for the game and they are here to represent the community, but they have to, it's the other way around too. They're gonna have to put CCP's kind of face on, right? It's kind of the benefits of being, so you got to drink a little of that Kool-Aid and go back the other way as well. That's the job of them, right? So, what do you think they need to do going forward?
Well, I know they've been putting together questions, and they're just trying to get clarifications, on things and trying to communicate back to the player base on kind of the things that CCP wouldn't say or didn't want to, because as soon as a dev says something, it's officially law, and they've been doing their best to come back and say, well, here's what they can officially say now, and here's what they're actually, would like to think down the road.
All right, that's fair. Now we'll sort of pose the same questions to Pokey, and sort of, you kind of free flow into that how you want, Pokes. But what's your sort of take on this going forward as a CPM1 candidate, and where do you see the CPM1 can assist in bringing the players a little bit closer to CCP and maybe vice versa?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think CPM0 kind of got blindsided by this. I mean, they were asked to do this, a year ago for quote unquote 3 months, and they had no idea that this is going to segue into switching platforms and then the mess that followed. So, I think in that regard, they kind of got blindsided, but they were probably doing the best they could given the information. I think it's unfair to blame the CPM0 like some players have been doing for this happening, because I think in terms of what CCP felt, this was a necessary move. I would agree. Now, what I do know is that they were screaming the whole time, you need to present it properly or it's going to blow up in your face. And obviously, CCP did not take that to heart, and it blew up in their face. So I think in that regard, hopefully this mess has taught, Shanghai that when it comes to presenting information to the players, you should probably listen to the players because they know how they're going to react, because developers don't know how to do a presentation of this magnitude without botching it, as you clearly saw. So, in that regard, I think I'm hopeful that CCP might have learned something. That might be hoping for a lot here, but in that regard, I'm guessing that it would be a bit better, with coming changes. Now, as far as what I think the CPM1 needs to do, I kind of touched on this before, but they need to show and get CCP to show that they are still committed to their players, not just committed to the development of another game. And while the Legion on PC was probably necessary, they still have a player base they need to take care of, and you can't just throw them in the mud, and that's what it looks like right now. And so, like I said, they need to continue to show that they are going to support Dust. They are going to make the transition from Dust to Legion as smooth as they possibly can. Now, I know there's going to be a drop. I mean, people are not going to buy PCs. Not everyone's going to buy a PC. PS4 may not happen. Shit's going to happen. But they need to ease that in as best as they possibly can. And I think that stressing to them that there are options they have which are financially viable and in time-wise viable that they can do to support the community, that needs to be a primary focus at this point. That needs to be, what can we do to keep the players happy, to show them that we are still faithful to them, not just to our pocketbook, and and really hammer in that we will continue to support Dust to an extent. This is how much we are willing to do, and we are going to continue work on Legion and try to get that transition as fluid as possible, because, like I said, you can't screw over a player base that is this loyal and this dedicated to the game. I mean, especially people from beta, we've been through some shit when it comes to playing this game. I mean, this is me speaking as a player. We've been through some shit. We've put up with a lot of shit. We're still here, or mostly here, and they can't ignore that. That's key, that they can't just ignore that dedication. So showing their commitment to us is necessary for our commitment to them. And if they want to salvage this, that needs to be a primary focus. And I think CPM1, that's going to be their focus right there. So, making sure to bridge that gap. Now, kind of what Pukin was talking about in how you work, because it does go both ways, is you need to go to CCP as CPM and say, here are things that people want. What is viable for implementation? What is possible? What can we do? And you work out between the two of you what systems and assets and features can be added to Dust, which will be, within CCP's business plan. And if they're being stingy, you really got to hammer in, listen, you can't screw these people over. They are going to be, the seed for Legion. These are the people that are going to be moving to Legion. They are going to be your beta testers. They are going to be your player base starting off. If you burn them, you're back to square one, and you don't want to go there. And going the other way, you need to make sure you take what you're doing with CCP and go to the players and go, listen, just want to show you, and it's all about the presentation. Content is great, but it's all about how you present it to the players, and CCP is failing at that. So CPM needs to go, here's what we're working on with CCP, this is what we're giving to you guys, this is how it relates to Legion, this is how it relates to Dust, this is how we're moving forward. And you need to keep that forward momentum, otherwise it's going to stagnate and die. And I think that needs to be the primary focus of CPM, is supporting the player base.
How many CPM zeros have blogs up, other than in the forums, the Dust forums? How many of them have other forms of media that they're communicating out?
Well, I mean, part of the problem for them has been that there's a couple that I know of outright, but they haven't been able to say anything about game development for the last 6 months.
Right, no, okay, put that aside, and I understand that, and they're always going to have the NDA. However, how many of them have blog sites or any other form of media out there? Because it's the moment, and this was something that our CSM had to learn too, is that, and it was tough because guys would get into the CSM that were bloggers, that were podcasters and stuff, and for that whole year they didn't know what to say or what they could say, and they stopped blogging, or they literally stopped. And a lot of those people weren't getting voted back on because players, don't want to hear NDA. But there are people like Mike Azariah, Ripper Tag, a bunch of other guys that are on the CSM that still continue to blog, that are able to communicate, and you don't hear every other paragraph because the NDA can't say this. They find ways to communicate back and forth with the community without breaking NDA, however, still being able to communicate to show that they are participating, that they are working with things. And you can communicate as a CSM member by just asking questions of the community. Say, hey, what is your idea about this? What is your idea about that? Hypothetically, something I'm thinking about, what if I push this to CCP? That's some of the things that these other CSMs have done in the past, and the ones that are currently on are still doing. CPM 0, how many of them have blog sites or any other form of media?
That are active? Not many. I think 0, actually.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's largely why they've been kind of hated by the community. Not that they're not doing anything, but it appears that they're not doing anything because of that lack of communication.
Exactly. And so when you do have a blow-up situation like this, you don't have, the CPM 0 going out going, okay, this really sucks, but give me some feedback. What, and acting like like members of a council that's wanting to be there for you. They're sitting back going, yep, we told them. I can't tell you what we said because it's all NDA. And that's not a sense of somebody that you want representing you, right? And yes, that's a learning curve. And we kind of talked about that, like CPM, but what's his name that's on there on the CPM 0?
Hans.
That switched, Hans. Hans should have known better. Hans should have been preparing people. Hans should have been, really working with people saying, look, guys, we got to get out there. Let's put our big boy pants on. We got to put our waders on because the shit is fucking rolling thick. But let's go grab our community. Let's go do what, these guys voted us in for. Let's show the community that, we're still here, that we're going to do things instead of curling up in a ball, being like they're whipped little people, with tape across their mouth.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think that's a big part of the CPM, CCP relationship is you need to be communicating with them saying, okay, I want a list of exactly what I can talk about, what is going to be safe outside the NDA that I can talk about, and talk about it. And then also, like you said, you ask questions. You go, well, what's your thought on this? And you do it publicly. You don't do it through private, chat channels. You don't do it through, tiny Skype channels. You get out there and you speak publicly. I mean, regardless of how the election goes, Biomassed here is going to continue. I think this is a good thing for the community. It's something that we don't really have right now. But if elected CPM, you've got a medium now that where we can get out there and get that information out there and speak about, what do you guys think in a public medium that's not hidden away? It's not, tucked away in some corner of the forums. It's out there. And I think having that weekly update is crucial. And that's a lot. That's a lot of why I want to do this, is just to talk about it publicly.
And you've seen the way we grill Mike Azariah when he comes on here, right? But Mike never breaks the NDA. However, he's still able to point people in the right directions. Hey, did you check out this part on the forums? Hey, did you see what this guy said? Hey, he might go, hey, I can't directly talk about that, but here's, did you see my thoughts about this? Did you see the, and finding different ways to communicate. And I think that's what you guys really need right now for as CPM members. And maybe you two guys are like those right guys because you are out here doing this. You guys got this podcast. Of course, this is your very first pilot episode. But you guys do this and you continue to do it. That's what I think the community of Dust 514 / Legion needs, is the people going, okay. And because CCP isn't going to round them up. CCP isn't going to go out there and give them all giant hugs and say, yep, we bend over. You can stand back up. We're done fucking you in the ass now, right? They're saying, hey, they're not going to do that, right? That's going to be the CPM that does that. Says, hey, okay, guys, let's come, have a come to Jesus meeting. And let's all sit down, maybe hold a town hall and say, give us your thoughts, talk to us, and just listen. A lot of people feel that, they just want to vent, right? A lot of the player base right now just wants to vent. Let them speak. Let them get it out, and let it get it out into a public arena where they feel then that they got it out and they can get it out of their system. And then at the end of that meeting, you go, all right, we're going to work on this. We're going to talk to CCP about a lot of your concerns. We're going to construct it so that maybe we can push it into your ear, so they understand this. This is our goal to develop, and one of our CSMs had to sit there and say, our goal this year is to make it so that we are valuable to CCP. This is our goal. When Matani was in them, he's like, we are going to we're going to make it so that the CSM is a viable tool for CCP. And that's what you guys got to do, the same thing. This is going to be our focus, our year. We're going to we're going to concentrate on the relations between CPM and CCP.
To the credit, of the CPM guys, I mean, even the CSM knew that this was coming. And, if I remember correctly, you had one of the CPMs actually drop out and quit. Because he saw this was coming. Maybe to their credit, they knew this was coming, and I hate to say it, but that'd be a massive downer for anybody. And they knew that even if they went to the community, whatever they would bring back, whatever feedback they bring back from the community would be falling on deaf ears because they're pretty well dropping development for Dust. So what use would it be?
But here's the thing, Bajran, and this is something, and I'm going to go back into a little customer service. I haven't ranted on customer service for a very long time, but I'm going to pull a little bit here out on your guys' first episode.
Okay, just so everybody knows. All right, if anybody listens to Podside, which, by the way, is one of the top 2 podcasts on Dust, I won't mention the other one, right, Bajran? The customer service might be the hottest of hot buttons for one each, FrFrmPukin.
I've been poking it for a while.
And I've been really good for like over a year now to go on a long rant. And I'm not going to go on a long rant. I'm just going to pull a little bit out. But here's the thing. When it comes to companies and customer service, one of the things that when I did new hire training for our technicians at Comcast, going in there and how you deal with customers, when you put the company face on and you go out and you're going to do your job, when the 10 guys prior to you fucked it up, when the people on the phone were making promises and they got dropped, and when you see the ads and they're not you're not getting what you're promised, you still got to go out there. You are sitting there with that shit ball in your hand, right? And what are you going to do with it? And, one of the main things for customers is that they're being heard, not necessarily that they that it's going to get fixed right at that moment. Not that they need that instant gratification, but as that they're being heard. And as long as, and this was, when I was in the Army, it was the same thing. It was all when I was going through the primary leadership training course in the Army, going for my E5 to become a sergeant. It was kind of the same thing was reflected in there as well. Is you can sit as a supervisor, you can just keep nodding your head, looking at him, and working on him, and listening to the guy as he's venting, as your soldier, or you do this with the customers too. You nod your head, you understand, you affirm to them that yes, we are listening to you, and then when they're done venting, which on the average takes about 7 minutes, when they're done venting, then you can say, all right, I got your concern, I'm noting it down. It's not, I can't, there's maybe something that you can't do about it right then and there to really make it better. But as long as they feel that they're part of a solution, as long as they feel that they put their word in, that they are being listened to, no matter how unhappy they are, they will stay because they feel that you're openly and engaged with them, right? That you have legitimate concern, that you listen. And CCP does not do that in any way, shape, or form, whether it's through their presentations that they do at FanFest, through the petition system that we have in EVE on our deal, through any of that. They don't give it. It's like, here, we're gonna push it out. It's not a two-way street. We don't really give a shit. You're going to take it how it is. And it seems like the only time people ever get their words in is if they're on the CSM, the CPM, or they're at a fan meet, right? That's what it seems like. That's the only time they get the words in. Yes, they have the forums on the site where you can go. But I know I put stuff up in there, and they probably just roll their eyes back the moment they see my name, because as much bitching as I've done, they just glass over and pass up. But that's the thing, as long as they show something, customers will be a lot more tolerant. You can only do it so many times, but they'll be they'll be tolerant. And I think that's where we got to go to now. And if you take that as a CPM or in a CSM member and look at it too, that, yeah, you're not an employee of CCP. However, you're kind of been charged with some stuff from CCP, some duties from CCP, but you're also charged with the duties from, you're going to be held accountable by the community that voted you in.
So, but to bring it back to what you said you worked for Comcast at one point, right?
Yep.
Okay, so just to throw out a hypothetical example here, let's say that you go to a customer's house, and I don't think you did this job, but they've got a problem with their internet. Well, their modem's not working right. So you say, okay, I've got a new modem. It'll do this and this and this, and it'll be far superior to your current one that you have. You go out, you get it, you put it in. Well, customer still wants to talk to you about the old modem and all the problems that it had, and your rebuttal to them is, why are we talking about this? I've got you a new one. Let's not worry about the old one.
It was tough, and I tell you what, one of my biggest frustrations when I worked at Comcast as a tech in the field was when you're going from analog to digital, and you're putting in these new digital boxes, and you got this guy with this 45-year-old TV,
right? And that's what I'm saying with Dust and Project Legion is if the CSM or the community comes to them, it's like, this conversation is not valid. We've got new stuff,
right? And it's tough because one of the things to call, and I don't know, we want to move this along, and I've seen the chat here, but one of the things that, like back in the day is when you had a cable-ready TV, a cable-ready TV is deemed that, according to the FCC, as any TV that can receive all the cable channels that are given out, freely, through the freely or whatever as cable. That's considered cable ready, or that you can receive the whole bandwidth that the cable company provides. Well, the cable bandwidth over time grew, Let's say like on your dial, the old radio station dial stuff, like you see in your car, you start out at what is 86 kilohertz, right? And you go up, or megahertz, and go up, right? All the way up to 108. Okay, now if you extend it onto that, the older radios can't do it, but the newer radios would be able to do it, right? So your TV or your radio wouldn't be radio ready, say to receive everything out there. Well, anyways, that was a problem trying to explain to older people watching TV that, over the years, everything's progressed. But you're right. Hey, I got something that's bigger, it's better, but it's maybe a little bit more complicated. And it was tough, but what you do in that position is you just let them vent. On the average, it takes 7 minutes.
Seven times 14 is a lot to a game developer. Just saying. Are you going to sit down?
I understand. I understand. But 7 minutes. In fact, most companies out there, like my wife works for Wells Fargo, and she's been, when she worked at Comcast as well on the phone. She's a phone banker now, but at the time she was a customer service rep at Comcast. She worked on the phone. Everything they did was based on 7 minutes. When we sat out and we actually did this as techs out in the field, we had to take timers with us, and we would let a customer vent, give their opinions on what's going on, blah blah blah. And we took the average, and it was 7 minutes. Right now that she's working at Wells Fargo, it's the same thing. 7 minutes. You got 7 minutes to deal with a customer. That's 7 minutes. You let these people, give them 7 minutes of their time. And granted, we have how many, 500 million or 500,000, subscribed customers, right? Although, how many of those are alts? But you get what I'm saying. That's a lot of people that got to put it up. That's why, the forums and that stuff.
You tell me a game developer that wants to sit down and listen to 14 people bitch about something that's old news to you, something you're not even developing on, and take 98 minutes of your life. Not going to happen.
However, that hour, a little over an hour and a half, might save them millions of dollars. So let's put it into a dollar ratio for their time.
What'd you have on this, Pokey?
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to what you were talking about before, and it also kind of goes to what Zell was saying, is that I think that the CPM and the CSM have a sort of power that the developers and the community don't have, and that if a developer says something, it is law. If the developer mentions anything, people will freak out going, oh my god, MTACs are coming. No matter what they say, they'll do that. But a CPM member can get out there. They can ask questions. They can say stuff. They can have that 7-minute conversation with people, and it doesn't set anything in stone. They can speak in an unofficial capacity where developers can't do that. And CCP needs to realize that the CPM can do that, and they can't. That is the biggest thing that they can do is they can speak in an unofficial capacity. They can have that 7-minute conversation, and they can be that filter which takes those complaints and speaks to the CCP and goes, okay, here are the issues in a nutshell. And they can again talk to CCP and then go to the players and speak in that unofficial capacity and say, effectively, this is what we're working on. What do you guys think? Without people freaking out saying we're getting fighters and MTACs and unicorns and dust. And I think that as long as we can hammer in to the developers that this is what we are capable of that you cannot do, you need us to do this. Otherwise, you're going to have a freaking fiasco like you did at FanFest. That's where the effectiveness is going to come, and that needs to be a primary focus of CPM1.
And see, even CSM was notified about this, but because of how heavily NDA Dust is right now, you can't really leak any of that information. You can't. If CCP hasn't broken it publicly, you can't talk about it.
Yeah. Right, but you can still have that conversation and handle those issues that I was talking about earlier.
No, you can't. Not with breaking that info.
No. Hold on, let me finish. Is that you can go to CCP and go, okay, we understand that this is a necessary change for you guys. We understand it's going to happen. But these are the issues that the players have. And taking into consideration what we know about what you're going to do with Legion you also need to make sure you are focusing on these issues for Dust. Otherwise, the players are going to lose it. And, that didn't happen. I don't know what the CPM said. I'm not saying they said anything or said something, but, that's key. And that you go, that because you are privy to secret information from CCP, you need to make the judgment on, these are what the players want. I know what's going on. How can we work these two together? And that's what's key. You may not be able to talk about Legion to the players, but you can still make that connect between the players and CCP and not break the NDA.
And one of the CPMs, and I think even one of the CSMs put this out, said, hey, the changes that are coming up, everybody's going to hate them. But however, if you would have turned around and said, but guys, stay open-minded. When you hear this information, stay very open-minded. Grab the seats of your chair, or whatever. Maybe, bite your tongue, because things will get better. They have to give somebody reassurance, because remember what I said. You let them vet, but then you got to turn around and give them some reassurance, right? So you got to do both, because if you just do one or you just do the other, it's a two-part thing. You have to. There's got to be some reinsurance. So if and I don't remember where the information came from. I just remember hearing it. It was that if that one person would have said, "Okay, it's really going to suck, guys. We're really going to take it in the shorts on this one."
Mike.
It was. It probably was Mike. And then come back and say, "Look, but it's going to change things forever." It's the smart business decision that they have to make, and it's a hard one. But guys, we got to get behind this, And if they would have done that, or somebody from the CPM would have came out and did that, I think too they would have been better braced for the information that they would have gotten at FanFest. Just like then and that's something that right now that Zion was trying to communicate in his Twitter, right? And he's going to be on Tuesday, on Podside. And he's going to come out because he was there. He was at the panel. He sat out there with because they couldn't get it. The panel. Remember that if you hear about this, that the panel for Dust, nobody showed up to. They ended up doing an ad hoc panel for it. They got a couple of guys to come in from CCP that kind of just sat there and just did deflect the whole time, but when it was all said and done, Zion's like, look, guys, we're on this. Wait till I come back, and we'll talk about this on Tuesday. He's got ideas. He's talked to the Dusties that are there in Iceland, the ones that he could get a hold of, and they were talking about this, just kind of like what we're doing now. So hopefully, that message can be conveyed that, hey, guys, and what you guys are doing on the show here tonight too is the same thing. Hey, guys, this is it. But now let's try to see, okay, we've all vented for the last few days. Everybody's been venting. Now, how are we going to go forward?
I hate to say this, and not to continue it, but there was no easy way to lessen the blow of this. Either way, you're going to get the backlash. It's like somebody coming up to you and saying, your PS3 is going to red ring in 6 days. It doesn't matter. Whether they tell you now or 3 hours before it happens, it's not going to lessen the blow. It's going to suck.
It's all about damage control. It's going to suck. It's going to suck. And you're still going to have, pipes bursting. But can you limit the amount of damage that can be done?
They hyped everyone up for what this was they
did it up. They did it wrong, right? They hyped everybody up, and then it just made that when they it overpressurized the balloon. So when they popped the balloon, it was that much more of an explosion. And I agree.
I think that's a pretty good way to look at it, guys. And, one thing I think we've got some wise counsel over here by some EVE players that have been on for a long time. And like I said, everybody on this channel has played EVE before, some to a lesser degree, others we have different exposure to the CSM and now the CPM. But don't forget, the team at Shanghai is distinctly different from the guys at in Iceland. They're all CCP. There's clearly some cultural connections there. And I don't mean just the Viking evilness that Pukin lays out on us, but literally, and this is something that the CPM Zero team has talked about. They had to train the Shanghai team how to work with a player council, and that's not small. And I think that's some discovery learning. And kind of in the interest of time, I wanted to kind of move this on a little bit, if that's okay, guys. Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Now, we do have the advantage of having Pukin and Bajran on. And literally, I just wanted to take a couple minutes, just your initial thin-sliced thoughts of, from an EVE player's perspective, how did FanFest go for you guys? I mean, I know that there's a lot of changes to industry. I'm tracking that. But if you could kind of talk to it at the sort of novice or newer player level, what did FanFest mean for you as an EVE player? And I'll kind of tee that up to Pukin first, and then Bajran, and then we'll do
Okay.
shout outs and we'll take it off.
In prior years, when you come out of there, you're super energized. Like, this is going to be cool. Even 10 years, and even the promises that they don't upkeep or whatever, it always looks really cool. They always put enough fluff on there. It was enough rejuvenation, and to rejuvenate the batteries to get me wanting to play again for the next year. And if that's their goal, they succeeded. Because I do come out of every FanFest that way. This is going to be cool. All right, I love their future. I love what's going on. And I'm one of those guys that kind of is gullible to that. 6 months down the road, it's like, man, they said they were going to do this at FanFest, and then you're kind of dragging it out, and then the next FanFest pops up. This year, I didn't come out as hyped, but it's really kind of cool that they have a better roadmap. And if they can do what they projected they wanted to do, it's cool. I like it. I love it, the ideas. I'm not really a huge industry person. So to me, the industry changes. I got mixed. I hear about a lot of mixed feelings from the players. I don't mind going out and mining and just handing the stuff over to the industrials, because I am the CEO of a corp. So I look at things at a more top level, or in a part of the leadership for an alliance. So I look at things at more of a top level and at the metagame level. At the metagame level, I see some really cool opportunities. The politics, the way that game can be played. You look at the chessboard and you're adding some new things to the chessboard, and I think it's awesome. And I think there's some changes that really needed to be done. The mixture of all three games coming out, awesome. I think it's really, really cool. If they can put, Legion / Dust, not necessarily, whether it was on the PC or whether it's on a console, for me, just having that component, watching that trailer was great. If we could have things like that's in those trailers, but every year they show us a really super cool trailer, and that's really cool cinematics that we don't have in these games. And so you tend to bite your tongue a lot on it, but I think it's cool. I took it every year I come, but I'm maybe just not as hyped as I am in the last few ones, but it looks cool. And I think it's enough to energize me for the next year. So that's
Bajran?
my part.
Yeah, cool. I appreciate that, Pukin. Bajran, what do you think?
Well, for those of you listening to the podcast, I'm on the completely different end of the spectrum as Pukin is. I'm a low sec, very, very small gang guy. I'm not leadership. I am a Diplo, but of a very small alliance in comparison. I'm not a jaded player by any sense. I'm still to this day, after all the years of playing EVE, I'm a bright-eyed newbie. And everything that I saw there looks good to me. I was very excited whenever they talked about adding a new faction ships, the Mortis Legion ships. I'm a low sec player. I'm not much into the other areas of space except for low sec. That's my domain. That's where I hang out. And the fact that they're adding that new faction into the low sec space, and that's going to be the only place it's going to be, really excites me. Because there's some very cool looking ships there. I'm not, sadly, because I didn't get to watch the whole presentation and everything, I don't remember the bonuses, if there were any given out. But I really look forward to... Oh yeah. They did announce that the warp scrambling and disruption range bonuses. I am absolutely looking forward to that stuff. The industry changes. I'm not much of an industrialist. I have done it in the past, but very, very little. I've mainly just done Tech 1 manufacturing, and I don't have any means or plans to do manufacturing right now. I hope that it doesn't affect the ship prices too terribly much, because I love blowing up my ships. But yeah, basically everything that I saw there, just as with all the other fan fests that I've watched, really excited me. I was kind of disappointed to hear about the dust thing, because I do faction warfare, and dust is kind of a big part of what I do. It helps with the systems. It either helps us take the systems quicker or makes it harder for us. And I hope that dust, doesn't completely fall apart, and they continue to aid us in our progress out there. And eventually, when Project Legion comes out, I hope that it picks it right back up. There's nothing that disappointed me from FanFest. I mean, it all looks great. I'm really excited about what they got coming out, and their new development cycle. I am really excited about, because I think that that's going to continue to diversify the landscape of Eve, and I think we can all remember a time of being a bit jaded, complacent with where Eve was, the ships that we fly, and I never want to be there. I always want to change and diversify my game, and that's what I'm really looking forward to with it.
That's awesome. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys kind of talking it at kind of a basic level. We have a lot of veteran players in the Dust community, but we actually have a surprising amount of people that were brought into Eve from Dust. And I think having veteran guys like you sort of articulate where you see things going, it helps ties the two communities together. So I think what we'd like to do now is we can kind of like generate some shout outs for folks. Again, kind of in our homage to the pod side format. And we'll kind of move on. We'll put some information out about next week's show. And I think that'll be it for tonight. So, Soraya, or actually, I'll tell you what, we'll let our guests go first. So, Bajran, you got a shout out for us?
Yeah, big shout out to our to my alliance executor, Marana, aka Funky Bacon. I'm sure some of y'all heard of him. He just got notified that he has become a part of the CSM, and I still don't think the news is quite set in with him. I really don't think he was expecting to get it, but with him being a personality for so long, he got it, and I'm really excited for him. And I hope that the news actually fully sets in soon with him. Shout out to all you guys for having me on tonight. I really appreciate it. Any publicity is good publicity, and I wish you guys the best in your future adventures with it. And I hope that that CCP is able to quell a lot of the frustration with the Dust community. I know that there's a lot of anger going on with it, and I think a lot of people really have to step back and think that this is the best decision for the game that CCP wants to create. There's been a lot of mistakes and missteps with the development of Dust, and this is a good chance for CCP to take a step back, look at their mistakes, and go forward with a new clean slate.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Pukin?
Yeah, props to the guys that are hanging out on the Podside channel that have had awesome conversations going on in there. I just kind of call a couple about just Power Trap, Eddie K. Jr., Free Beers, Dr. Welter.
Never forget Alyssa.
Yeah, Alyssa Sacra, yes, in there as usual, hanging out with us tonight and making sure that we're live again. That was cool. And yes, so for the because you guys will be pimping out, so we get some Dusty listeners on here. We got the Podside channel in game. Go to there. It's for Podside Networks, which is the radio station here that we're going to do their help you guys here on Biomassed. Continue to roll and get out there. I know you guys are going to host all your stuff on your own site, which is awesome. And we'll make sure we get you guys up with Cypher and them on the e-podcast. Yeah, props to you guys for really, stepping up and out of the Dust community and trying to bridge the two worlds together. I really like this podcast that you guys are launching here and being able to bridge the, at least two out of the three things right now, which is Eve and Dust. And it's cool. It's really cool. So props to you guys and allowing Podside to help you guys out as much as we can. So thanks.
Hey, Pukin, we really appreciate it. Pokey, I know you got to run, so why don't you get it up next?
Yeah, everyone, thanks for listening. That's great. I think this is going to be a real good thing. I want to really keep the communication open between the community and the media and whatnot, and especially shout out to the guys at Multiplex Gaming and Pukin and whatnot for helping us get this set up. He kind of saved our ass this week. It was kind of a clusterfuck with Fanfest, especially the way it went and trying to get this set up in time. But we pulled it off. He helped out immensely, so I really appreciate it. Thanks again, guys. And shout out to OSG guys. I'm CEO of OSG, and they're a really great group of guys. They took the news pretty hard, but we're sticking together, and that's great. So I always appreciate them. But yeah, we're a bit over time. I gotta run, but thanks Jaysyn Zell for helping me out here, and I think we'll make this great. So thanks, guys.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Ursula, I see you in channel. Do you have any shout outs you want to throw out there? You've been kind of lurking most of the podcast.
Yeah. Shout out to Mike Azariah, who was also elected to the CSM. Now his second time. 2 out of 6 ain't bad.
Nope.
Yeah, that's winning odds. And
he ran for 8 years.
No, he ran for 6 years.
Oh yeah, you're right.
That is persistence. That's actually pretty good. That's one of the reasons that Mike was pretty high on my ballot, to be honest with you. So I just want to kind of give a couple of quick shout outs, and we'll close this out because we are over time, but a little bit expected for the first show, and frankly there was a lot of material to cover, just kind of how it fell out on the calendar. The number one shout out I have is ultimately going to be, and I know this is going to catch a lot of hell for this, but it's really going to be for if CCP had they not come up with the idea for all these games, none of us would be talking. Now the flip side is that it still doesn't let them off the hook for all the drama and shit that they inflict on people. But I do appreciate the fact that they've set up a venue where we can have these kind of discussions with each other. Be they good, they bad, they generate social issues, they generate great nerdgasms of spreadsheets and all kind of crazy shit. And so I have to say that. Now, moving on from that, I do want to specifically talk to a couple of people and just shout out to the Podside crew. Literally, they came out of nowhere in about a week time, put Pokey and Zell and to a lesser degree myself, set us up with this platform because they saw what we did where we wanted to try to bridge the two communities. And we know that there's a little bit of a divide, maybe not as much as some people think, but that's one thing that we definitely wanted to do moving forward was be value added to each other. So that's kind of one thing I wanted to lay out. And lastly, to the actual players of Dust that I play with on a routine basis in OSG, and a lot of the other guys floating around on Skype that we talk to, Hans, Nova on the CPM. We really, really appreciate the feedback. There's a vibrant Dust community that will remain and will, I hope, mostly transition into a Legion community later. And trust me, I know. For about 24 hours, I thought about unsubbing my EVE account and walking away. But the reality is we do need to move on, and we need to help CCP shape what we want in the next version of the game and do it in a way that's positive. And I know that's kind of hard for some folks. There's a lot of emotion, but I think that's what we need to do. So with that, I again really appreciate Pukin and the Podside crew for having us on. And
hey, it's our pleasure.
Our intent is to have this on, at least for right now, once a week. It'll be at the same time slot on Sunday evenings for now. We'll probably establish that for a couple, 3 weeks at least, and then make an assessment if we need to move to another night of the week. But right now, we intend to do a weekly show, probably about 1 hour in length, so a little bit shorter than this. And again, I appreciate the help from Podside, and I think that's about it.
All right. And I just want to give a shout out to my guys and top men. I want to give a shout out to Nova and Hans on the CPM 0 who answered a couple questions for me today, which was kind of nice coming into this to have not have too many questions lingering outside of what CCP itself needs to answer. And I want to give a shout out to Free Beers for chilling in the channel and listening to us yap. Because Free Beers is, of course, the original Dust Bitter Vet.
I love it.
All right. Well, that wraps up our first episode of Biomassed, and we really appreciate everybody being here. And hopefully, we'll go as long as Podside has, which I believe you guys are on your 201st or 202nd episode. So
Yeah, we're
again,
coming up on our 202nd. That is what I think is what Tuesday will be. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, with that, we'll close the show out. Thanks, guys. 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 Show out. Thanks, guys.